What is up everybody? Welcome to this week's Jesse Spec YouTube video. This episode is really special because we will be closing officially the swap process of the 2ZZ in my MR2. So there are a few final touches that I have to do and I'll be looking at them in this video. Amongst other, there will be the cooling, how to bleed it. Of course, there will be some leaks, so I will be fixing them. And also there will be the whole electrical aspect. There are a few little things that I have to tweak, including the lift harness. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. Join me. All right, welcome back to the warehouse. Last week I installed the muffler on the car. The exhaust sounds fine. We have no oil leaks at the moment. The next step now is to fill up the coolant that you see right here. So that's a pretty finicky thing actually to do on these cars because, as you can imagine, the radiator is in front of the car and the engine is in the back. So you have like 3-meter long hoses going all the way to the front and back. So this is actually a very complicated process. So I thought this is probably a very useful video because I couldn't see any interesting ones in English. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. Okay, first step, jack up the car. That sounds like Mighty Car Mods, but that's the thing you have to do. They even recommend to lift up the rear of the car so you have some weight distribution going to the front. That will help the water flow better. So a few things we have to do inside the car. First of all, release the hood. Make sure to put the heating on to the max. On hot, of course, because the liquid has to go through the heater module that is inside here, so that has to be on, and put it on full power. So that will help us once we're going to bleed the whole thing after. Okay, let's open it up here. Damn, I need to really wash this car. Okay, so here's the hood open. And first thing you need to do is take the plastic off here. And second thing you need to do is, with 10mm wrenches, take this box out. So that's what we're gonna do. Oh, and by the way, today, this is my assistant, Mimi. Say hi.
Hello.
Okay, so she's gonna help me with filming today. So let's get back into it. There are exactly 4 screws, as you can see here. That's what it looks like, at least. So let's remove this. There we go. Okay, let's take a look in here. Okay, so we removed the tray here, and now the next step is to take a look at the bleeding valves. So we have one here that you can see right here. Toyota thought about everything, left even the bleeding hose on it. I don't know if they ever bled the coolant on this car before. And here, come over here, Mimi, is the second bleeder. So we have the bleeder hose here and the bleeder valve, the white one that is behind here. As you can see, this one I can open and close to bleed the coolant through here. So basically we have this bleeder hose. We're gonna have to hold it up a little bit. So when the liquid comes out, it can go up here like this. This will be the same on this side. Put the hose here. And you will bleed it like this as well in order to have the liquid to come up as high as possible. And that will allow us to get all the air out of the system. So first thing to do is, so after the swap, obviously hook up all your hoses. Make sure, I already checked that oil is not leaking, so we're all good. Now we're going to do the coolant. So we have both of these hoses, one on top and one below the expansion vase here. So remove your cap, use a funnel, and we'll start filling up the coolant. Some coolant, and start filling here, slowly. Okay, I put too much. So let's see if we have some leaks other than what I spilled. Looks like fine for the moment. Basically has to go sink through all the way through the whole system, so that's why you have to let it go down slowly a bit. I always seem to add a little bit too much so it overflows, but anyway. Always check for leaks. Guess what?
There's one leak coming from here. You can see exactly why it's leaking. Oh, focus, you.
Here we have some leak going on here. I don't know exactly why. So we're going to take a look at that. So as usual, when you fill up stuff, leaks appear. So that's what I had. I had one of the main hoses in the back that was leaking. The clamp, the stock one, wasn't clamping the hose enough. I don't know why. Even by wiggling it around and putting it, it wouldn't hold. So I added a second one in order to make sure that it clamps correctly. And now we see there's no more leak. So we'll be able to start the engine now. So here you can see it's full. Now we're going to be starting the engine to make the fluid go all over the place. And make sure to open the doors because, of course, exhaust fumes are dangerous. So here we have the coolant temperature as well, so we're going to let the engine get a bit warmer and start checking the coolant temperature from there. So the temperature is going up. We're going to be looking into it further now. So see here, I'm bleeding the coolant. It has come all the way until here. We have no more bubbles in here. So let's close it again here. That is closed. So now we're going to do the same on this side. Okay, it's coming too. Still have bubbles, see here. You can see it coming out not very regularly. So you see here now we're starting to see some bleeding going on. It's coming out here, looking good. So I'm going to close this one. I'm going to go back on the other one. Okay, so we see here, it seems like it's bleeding really nicely. It's still full, it got full again. So I'm going to close this off, definitely, because it's well purged. No more air bubbles in here. Okay, all locked up. Now, to the other side one last time. Check if everything's okay. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to close here as well. And we're good to go. So now we put this all back, and like it was before, put it back, so next time I need it, I know it will be ready to be usable, and I'm not going to lose it. There we go. Another important part that has to be done, as you heard, the car was revving like this. This is because there are two cables that have to be swapped in the TPMS, which is the throttle position sensor. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now, and that will allow the car to have stable idling, and that is actually the only modification you have to do to your harness in order to get the engine run perfectly. So I'll quickly show you how to do that. So you can see here's the TPMS, the throttle position sensor. Take the plug out, already unblocked it, and they basically say, so I took it out like this, the middle cable, the brown one and the blue one, have to be interchanged. Okay, so that has to be done. So how do you do this? Look at the plug. There's a little white thing here that you can pull out like this, and that will unlock the pins, and then we can pull them out. So actually you have to pull this thing out completely. We're going to put it here. This is the lock, and now with something pointy you will push out the pins that you need to push out. Okay, so see here, this one is coming out nicely like that, and the blue one same. Let's push them out. There we go. So we got them out both here. So what you simply do is, can you see it on the camera? Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So you take the blue one out, take the brown one, put the brown one in here, and put the blue one in here. Okay, then stuff them back in right away. Okay, up. Not quite, huh? Almost. Okay, and then we take this one up. There we go. Put them all back in nicely, and then you see everything's back in here. Then we put this guy back in so the pins don't get lost. I'll try to push it in a bit further. There we go. Take this guy. Okay, so now it's in. Voila. And there it is, installed. There we go. The car is idling perfectly now, just because I had to switch these two cables. So we're gonna continue filling up the water, and let's get that done. Okay, it's really cold out here, but let's look at the rest. So we finished the bleeding process. I closed both valves here and here. I put back the hose, like in the user manual. And the best way, in my opinion, to see if the coolant is well filled and is fully filled is both tubes, when you hold them up like this, have to be at the same or almost identical level. That's one way to check. And the other way to check, let me show you. So we see here cooling temperature 45 degrees. And the best way, in my opinion, to see if everything works is to simply touch the heater here, and if you feel heat coming out, that means that the liquid went everywhere, including the highest point in the car. So this is all good. So we successfully bled the cooling, and this is what it looks like once outside of the car. Okay, and the last part, remove this, put the cap on to let the pressure build up. And it's important to keep an eye on the level of the coolant here. Can you see it? Come closer. It's always important to keep an eye on this, especially while we're warming up the engine, to see if everything's working perfectly. Okay. Okay, the last part of this engine swap is to connect the most beautiful part of this engine, is the lift. So as you can see here, come over here, Mimi. I have the PowerFC, Apexi PowerFC, the swap harness in green, and I have these two cables here that are the lift harness. So now the last part is to pull these through the body panel here and plug them in, and the swap will be ended, and I'm really happy. So let's do that and let's close this swap build. Okay, I moved the central loom of the engine outwards, so I took it out of its place, and I will be able to pass now these cables through. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay. There we go. So this is the lift harness, and now to the closing point of this swap, we have one plug here, this one goes here, and the other one goes over here. And we're good. So let's start the engine. Now you can tell the idling is nice and smooth. All right, we're back in the office. So we finally successfully finished the swap. I could bleed the coolant, and I just wanted to touch on that point one more time just to make sure everybody understands it. So in summary, what you have to do when you bleed a MR2, first and foremost, lift the rear of the car. Then you fill as much coolant in as you can by putting the heater and everything onto the maximum hot and full power, and fill as much as you can. There's no point in starting the engine as I did. And by the way, if you noticed, the video goes a bit back and forth between subjects because actually I started to get pissed off basically with the idling not being stable. So I solved that issue first, and then basically we bounced back to the whole bleeding process. But anyway, so at that point, once you filled up everything, no need to start the engine. So what you do is you plug in two hoses in the heater module valve and one at the radiator. And what you do is you hold both hoses up like this. So you open both valves and let the coolant go into the hoses. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna step back. So that means you have to, of course, have the hoses, somebody holding them for you or hanging them up higher. And you're gonna step back and look that if the expansion vase level and the hose levels are at the same height visually. That's how they say it in the Toyota workshop manual as well. So you do that.
Who the f is this?
So you step back maybe 3 or 4 meters back and check if all the front hoses in the engine bay are at certain level, and make sure that the coolant level in the expansion vase as well in the engine compartment at the back are roughly at the same height. And that is the perfect way to fill it up without even starting the engine yet. So once you do that, you can then close all the hoses and start the engine. And then after, you check actually if the heater is actually blowing hot air on your hand or not. And then you know that all is good, and just complete the level in the back, make sure everything is fine, and then you're good to go. Some of you might ask what to do if the levels are not the same, even in the engine bay themselves or between the front and the back. So what does that mean is basically you have air in your system at some place. And you know, as there are like 5 meter long hoses between the front and the back, you need to get the air out of that. So how do you do this? First of all, lifting up the rear will help a lot, but also pushing on the hoses. Typically in the engine bay, you can squash them a little bit to squeeze air out of it, and this should help. And anyway, I wouldn't highly recommend it, but maybe starting the engine briefly just to get the pump turning and circulating and everything could help as well. So I did that, and once that was done, I could tell right away, okay, all the hoses are at the right height. So I knew that it was fully purged. I could close everything and then start the engine. So it's actually easier than I thought if you do it correctly. And yeah, anyway, so thank you so much for watching this video. It's been a long journey. I did like maybe 17 episodes on this whole swap process. So it took a long time, but it's really was a fun project. And it doesn't mean that everything stops right here. So you haven't seen any tuning content, so mapping and all that on the dyno. So this is sort of the next step. So I'll be doing that. I also still didn't get the clutch installed, so I'm going to be doing a clutch video. That's probably the next step. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. There's a lot of more content coming on this car. So make sure to be subscribed if you're not. Activate the notification bells. And if you feel like sharing or showing this video to your friends, I greatly appreciate that. And I will see you next week.